Hey everybody, this is Marian Owen.
And this is David Owen.
And this is You Show Me Yours, the podcast where a married couple talks about the movies and TV that they loved before the first date. And today, I was made to watch Gremlins.
Gremlins, which is, of course, the 1984 Joe Dante picture.
Joe Dante, is he a master of the cinema arts?
No,
Joe seriously?
Dante?
I've never heard that name before.
Inner Space, Explorers, Gremlins 2?
Explorers? I don't know what that is.
Oh, all right. You'll be watching that at some point. No, this movie is like look at the credits of this movie. This movie is directed by Joe Dante, which again, Joe Dante, he made a lot of really good 80s movies. Okay. I rattled off a few. I'm sure there are more that I'm missing.
I did notice some familiar names at various points.
Chris Columbus is the writer.
Yes,
right?
I noticed that.
Is the writer.
And Spielberg.
And, Spielberg produced.
And his cohort.
And Kathleen Kennedy, it was a bunch of, I'm sure this was the Amblin Entertainment joint back in the day. It was just, it's just, this is one of those movies, 1984. Joe Dante, Chris Columbus, Steven Spielberg. Like, how can you go wrong, right?
You can't. Well, and, the Spielberg connection possibly accounts for the strong E.T. vibes that we've got here.
Maybe.
It's like E.T. meets It's a Wonderful Life, which is telegraphed pretty strongly, meets, I don't know, some other things.
Okay, don't sell all our goods here in the first 2 minutes. Again, if you're not familiar with Gremlins, well, you're in luck. You should definitely watch it after listening to this podcast. But Gremlins, I'll give you the structure of it. A suburban kid, or not suburban, a small town kid is given a wonderfully strange creature, the Mogwai, by his traveling salesman father for Christmas, and just hijinks ensue. Yeah.
Chaos, you might say. I think it's more than hijinks.
By the end. Because
there's like fires and explosions and kind of chaos.
By the end there is.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yes.
So, notable actors in this movie. We've got Zach Galligan, who has just been in a lot of stuff. I can't name anything off the top of my head, but I assure you've seen him in 80s movies.
Yeah, I don't know what he's been in, but he looks very familiar.
Yes.
He's kind of cute.
Yeah, speaking of kind of cute, Phoebe Cates is in this movie, along with her collaborator in Fast Times, Judge Reinhold, who plays a great character.
Who is pushing 40, I think?
At the time of this, he's probably 30, playing 23.
22.
22, sorry, 22.
No, 23. Well,
I don't know, 22,
young.
23, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a whimsical ride. It is it's one of my favorite Christmas movies.
Okay, explain to me why you consider this a Christmas movie when you don't consider, for example, Die Hard a Christmas movie.
Right. So
or other things.
I consider this a Christmas movie because Christmas is it's integral to the plot.
No.
So Gizmo is a Christmas gift. And Christmas is sprinkled throughout the movie, right? So in Die Hard, it's happening at Christmas. Ho ho ho! I've got a machine gun. That's it. That's it. That's all. So John McClane could be going to visit his wife for any reason. It doesn't have to be Christmas.
This could be a gift for any reason.
All you lose is ho ho ho! Now I've got a machine gun. So if you take Christmas out of this movie, you lose the Christmas gift, sure, but you lose the wintertime setting. You lose Kate's horrible backstory,
which I would have been okay with.
You laugh so hard.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
It was that funny.
Yes. Sorry, folks. You lose Kate's wonderful backstory. You lose the Christmas tree attack. You lose Corey Feldman as dressed up as a Christmas tree. Oh yeah, Corey Feldman's in this movie. Corey Feldman dressed up as a Christmas tree. You lose just the setting, the time of year, the whole deal. You lose, this movie is not about Christmas, but it is about Christmas. Like it happens in the Christmas season in a way that is very specifically tied to Christmas, whereas Die Hard, I would argue, does not. And yeah, I was a video store clerk in the late 90s, and I used to put Die Hard in the Christmas section when we put our Christmas movies out and chuckle and I'm so witty, I put Die Hard in the Christmas movies because it's a Christmas movie. And then at some point I turned 20, and I realized like, oh, this is only funny to me and like a handful of other dorks. And since I'm not a dork anymore.
Sure.
Don't say anything. Don't say anything.
Yes. You're not well, I'm not a dork either. So, it's fine.
Oh yeah. No dorks in this house.
No, not at all. Okay. So it's a Christmas. I mean, sure. Fine. I don't have.
Yeah. You can dispute it if you want. Also, they're watching It's a Wonderful Life, which back then pre VHS being as out there as it is, then they would not be watching It's a Wonderful Life on television. And as you said, it's a very telegraphed It's a Wonderful Life movie in the first place.
Well, I can't remember.
Homage.
At the time, there was a period where It's a Wonderful Life was on all the time pre-Christmas. And then something happened. The studio repurchased the rights or something, and now it's only on once a year.
Yeah, something like that.
So,
sure.
Yeah, I was about to say, that telegraphs clearly that it's December 20th or something, but then I remembered, no, this was the 80s. You could watch it in August if you wanted to.
Well, maybe.
If you wanted to, which some people at this table should, because it's amazing.
Not happening. I haven't seen it and I never will.
Yeah. Folks, if we ever do, you show me yours, It's a Wonderful Life edition, you will know that hell has frozen over because he will not let me show him this movie.
Yes, that is correct.
It's glorious, but he won't.
It ain't happening. All right.
Tisk. No taste.
Okay, so Gremlins.
Anyway,
let's get on to Gremlins.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, Gremlins. We start out with Rand Peltzer. I forget the actor's name. Hoyt something. He's been in a ton of stuff.
He's poor man's Ned Beatty. That's who I was thinking of the whole time, and it's not him, but it's
very
close.
Very much so. Yeah. So we start out. He's in air quotes Chinatown. Not the Chinatown that Jack Nicholson is in, but he's in a different Chinatown, very moody, very atmospheric Chinatown. And he ends up in a shop full of curiosities. This kid drags him down some stairs, like clearly what today would be a mugging situation.
Yes.
Drags him down some stairs to his grandfather's shop. And the first thing that Rand does, because Rand is a really bad inventor. He's like this Ron Popeil 80s like pocket fisherman kind of guy. He's got this little travel buddy that's got, all your things you need. You don't have to carry heavy luggage when you travel because you've got a toothbrush and a toothpick and nail clippers on this.
But you do have to carry a brick of toiletries. Yes, I don't think I'd get through TSA.
So he has two purposes by going to this shop. He's trying to, number one, find a present for his son, Billy. And number two, he is trying to sell this travel buddy or whatever the hell it's called. Get it into this guy's store, because someone would definitely come to this ancient Chinese shop
looking for travel toiletries.
Of curiosities, looking for a self-made inventor's weird little travel thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, while he's there, it's not happening. Nobody's going to pick up his stupid invention. He hears some commotions and.
That's my impression of a Mogwai singing.
That's as good as my Javier Bardem impression. That's a callback. Watch episode 1. So anyway, he hears him, and so Gizmo is voiced by Howie Mandel, who is doing his Bobby voice, which Bobby was like his childlike character that he did in his stand-up. Like so many things in the 80s. Guys had these stand-up routines, even like Pee Wee Herman. They had these stand-up routines that were not explicitly for children. And then some TV exec saw it or heard them doing it and said, that's a great voice. What if we did that for children? That's a great character. What if we did that for children? So you got Pee Wee's Playhouse and you got Bobby's World and you got all these weird things in the 80s where these comedians with these kind of blue acts ended up doing kids shows for some reason.
Is that also how we got Dave Coulier? I think
maybe I don't know.
I think he was it's made of wood, and then they were like, let's put him on a sitcom with children.
Why isn't this guy on a sitcom? I'm sure he was a horrible person before that. So anyway, so he hears the Mogwai, and he ends up discovering the Mogwai, and he wants to buy it because it's this cute little creature, huge ears, little expressive eyes and a tiny little mouth and nose. It's brown and white fur. And, it really does look like somebody was like, make up an ancient Asian mythological creature. And they came up with the Mogwai.
Yeah.
And so he wants to buy it, but he can't buy it. The Mogwai not for sale. But the kid who drug him down realizes like, we're in a basement in Chinatown. Like we sell nothing. We're probably going to lose our lease. We need some money. So he offers like $200 or $300 for it. The old man won't take it. So the kid says, meet me out back. So he ends up selling him the Mogwai, gives him the rules when he sells him the Mogwai, right? Very important, the rules. Mm-hmm. Controversial, the rules, but very important. Number one. What's rule number one?
No bright lights.
No bright lights.
Especially sunlight.
Right. No bright lights. Especially sunlight, because it'll kill him. Number two is no
water.
Water, can't get them wet.
Not even to drink,
Not
right?
even to drink. Yeah. Not even to drink. Now, I'm pointing these out. I'm saying these are controversial because most of these rules get broken multiple times throughout the rest of the movie. And then the third one is the one that you can't even, if you start to think about it logically for even a second, it starts to immediately unravel. No food after midnight. Don't feed them after midnight. No matter how much they beg, don't feed them after midnight. What's midnight? I don't know.
Who knows? What time zone? We don't.
Right. The Mogwai their body adapts to the time zone that they're in. I mean, they're ancient mystical creatures, all right? So they've got a magic time zone sensing device. I don't know.
It's just like your cell phone. It will adapt to state lines and time zones and the time change.
Changes automatically.
So,
the easiest thing to say is like, hey, just don't feed them before they've slept. Like after dark, but don't feed them again until the morning. But like that's wordy. Like if you say, well, don't feed them after dark, but you can't feed them until the light again.
What kind of an ancient rule that ends up being broken is that's specific?
Right. It's got to be
as vague as possible.
Got to be vague.
Can I just, this whole scene, it struck me when we were watching it and now as you're describing it, if you look at this as a metaphor for colonialism,
right?
Wow, is there a lot to unpack. And there's even some commentary that was probably not intentional, but I'm seeing it now on, foreigners and various things.
Yes. Well, I mean, yeah, like that's just kind of the through line of the movie. Yeah. That even it's in the end, we'll get to it. But yeah, sort of the closing statement of the movie is like, you white people, you destroy everything.
Yes.
But that's another thing I think that you will notice as we go through this, because I'm going to show you a lot of 80s movies, and I think you're going to find that a lot of these 80s movies are a little more intelligent and have a little bit more of a message beneath the immediate surface than you might have expected they would.
Well, okay, question. If nobody in the 80s got that message, do we give them credit for the movies having a message?
I mean, it's a tree falls in the woods scenario here. Like, if the message wasn't received, was there ever a message? I don't know.
Well, if the message wasn't received, do we know that that's what the message was intended to be, or are we just seeing it through a new lens?
I'm going to give Chris Columbus I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Okay,
that he included a message because he's a good writer.
And his name is Chris Columbus.
Yes.
The irony burns there.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yes, indeed.
That's just icing on the cake.
So he gets the Mogwai.
Yeah.
He gets the Mogwai, and he's takes it back to his family, back to Kingston Falls. Kingston Falls is this idyllic small town square, movie theater, department store. It's like every 1950s town in any movie or television show.
Much like Bedford Falls.
Sure.
Which is where It's a Wonderful Life is set, which you would know if you ever watched it.
Uh-huh. So anyway, we're immediately introduced to Billy, this is our main character, and he's late for work. He's trying to get his goddamn foreign car, and he's trying to get it started. We're also introduced to Mr. Futterman, who is played by oh God, what's his name? Miller. Oh, I mean, he's in a lot of the Joe Dante movies, and he just plays this just like crotchety old man, or he's in Explorers. He's in a bunch of stuff. Dick Miller. That's his name. Thank you, Internet. He's in a bunch of movies, and he plays Futterman. And Futterman he's laid off from his job at the mine or chemical plant or whatever the single employer was in this area, and he's just crotchety. He's got him an old American-made snow plow that he's using to plow the roads because it's snowing, because it's Christmas. And Billy's car won't start, and he just gives it to it. Goddamn foreign cars. He hates it. So anyway, Billy's got to just hot foot it.
Even though I should point out, Billy has a Volkswagen,
right,
which was European. So did we give that the same amount of guff in the 80s as we did Japanese cars? I don't know.
Oh, that one's worse. It's from the Kaiser. That's even worse.
Oh, sure. Okay.
That's the same car that the Kaiser rode around in. So come on. Okay, so anyway, Billy's late for his job at the
bank. So can I say, how old is Billy? It's hard to tell.
Yeah, I'm gonna say he's there with the character we're about to meet, Gerald. I'd say probably early 20s.
Okay, because since he ends up going back to the high school later, Miles Boiler, I was like, how? And he's hanging out with this kid who's like 12.
Yeah.
So it's hard to tell.
Not a lot of friends in a small town,
I suppose.
And Billy's kind of a dork, and so is this kid, because Billy draws comics.
Yes.
And Mr. Futterman wants to see it in the funny papers, along with Little Abner and other comics that Billy has to tell him are no longer printed in the newspaper.
Yeah, so along with Nancy and Sluggo and the Family Circus. So Billy is late to work at the bank, and the car won't start, but he walks, because you can walk to work. I mean, that's how idyllic this place is. You can walk everywhere.
And we get a little introduction to the town, through the square. Yeah. You see here's the movie theater, here's the department store. He's, hey, you, and hi person that I know. And because
so Billy is a good guy.
Yeah, good guy. Everybody likes him. He's a good kid.
Yeah, and his dog's coming to work with him, and his dog is
Barney.
Rather mangy looking, but still very sweet, well behaved. Everyone's he's a
little bit of a Benji. Like, he's like a long haired Benji. Like he's not he may be a purebred of something, but he looks a little scruffy.
Yeah. So, and he's coming to work, and Billy is a teller in the bank, and the dog just sits in a little cabinet by his feet all day and
hangs out.
Most of the time, I guess, behaves.
Barney's a good dog.
Yeah.
Unless Mrs. Deagle comes around.
Yeah.
So Mrs. Deagle, we're introduced to Mrs. Deagle right outside the bank when we learn quickly that she's some kind of landlord.
If this were It's a Wonderful Life Part 2, she would be Mrs. Potter.
I don't know. So she's her character is immediately sold when a woman with 2 kids comes up and says, Joe lost his job. We're not going to get the rent in on time. And she's like, oh, well, that's too bad. And, now you know what to ask from Santa.
So
rent.
She's, clearly heartless, cares only about money.
Yeah. And this is your social commentary, because she walks away into the bank to deposit her check or whatever of into her high yield IRA or whatever the hell it is. And as the woman and the 2 kids are walking off, one of the kids goes, "Mommy, I'm hungry," and she goes,
the mom
"I
says,
know,
I am too."
Yeah. So again, just like more of your just sort of drive-by social commentary, like, here's this ruthless rich woman, and here are these poor people who are just trying to make it.
Yeah, that was a little knife to the heart right there. Just a little throwaway.
Yeah.
To break your heart there.
So once we get inside, Mrs. Deagle just barges to the front of the line.
Mm-hmm. And she's been holding a ceramic snowman head this entire time. And she shoves it in Billy's face and says, "Your dog, this is what's remaining of it's a Bavarian snowman. And your dog broke the rest of it. We didn't see
Barney.
this. We don't know, but we. And she's arguing back and forth with Billy, and Billy is apologetic, but also like, I don't know what I can do about it. And
like, you can tell Billy's dealt with her before. He's just straight up like, tell me what I owe. Like, what do I owe you?
So, she's a little bit Miss Gulch in The Wizard of Oz.
Sure, yeah.
So,
very, very.
Yeah. And she says, your dog has wronged me for the last time. You better keep that dog away from me. I will wring his neck. I will, and Barney in the cabinet below is getting more and more agitated, because he hears this, and he unties the rope that is keeping him in the cabinet, and he lunges over the counter at her. Not really in a vicious way, but just, I have had it. You stop it. You leave my human alone.
Yeah, yeah.
And pushes her to the ground, and the snowman head breaks, and, Billy, you're in for it now.
Yeah, and this is when we're introduced to Gerald.
Yeah.
Billy's boss comes in, and Gerald is sort of his second. And he's like, what the heck is going on? Poor Mrs. Deagle. And he helps Mrs. Deagle out. And then Gerald is left there, Judge Reinhold, left there with Billy to give him a little stinger, just, you've done it again, Billy, or whatever he says.
Yeah.
But you're getting immediately, you're dickometer goes off.
Yes.
Because Gerald is a dick.
Yeah.
We're also in the meantime introduced to Kate, who is our love interest, our secondary protagonist.
Yes. Well, and
I know words.
The first time that we see her, she greets Billy. She's coming into work, and she asks him to sign a petition to Mrs. Deagle to renew a lease, or I forget the
local
details,
bar, the local dive bar is going to be they're going to be ousted from their spot, and it's the spot. Billy says, "Oh, my dad proposed to my mom there," and she says, "Everybody's dad proposed to their mom there."
Yeah, so
it's like the local watering hole, and she's gonna get rid of it. Kate is trying to get it declared a historical landmark.
So this is to show us Kate is a good person, she's played by Phoebe Cates. Has Phoebe Cates played anybody who's not a good person?
I don't know. Whoever she plays, they're good because Phoebe Cates plays them.
She's
automatically good. So
lovely.
So we've got our principals finally introduced here, Kate and Billy, who are really the bulk of the movie is going to be kind of revolving around them in one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
There's a quick scene where they go to this bar in question after the snowman incident. And we find out that, again, Kate with a heart of gold, she's working there for free so that the owner can save money to, pay the rent. And Gerald makes does more dickish stuff and says,
why would you do that?
I'm the vice president.
You must be a sucker and a loser.
Yeah. So Gerald, we don't really get a lot more out of Gerald.
No.
He's just really kind of there just to have just some guy to go, "Oh, you," because the movie quickly sort of changes gears.
Yeah, we never get to see him vanquished. I'm gonna assume that is on the cutting room floor somewhere.
He died, and for sure in some kind of grisly way, because they there is a scene later in the bank, and there's definitely a pan over, and you see his just mutilated body there.
It's got to be.
They had to cut it though to get a PG rating.
Yeah. So, and Gerald has a great line to Billy. Well, first of all, he calls him Captain Clip-On because we saw that Billy has a clip-on tie that he sort of stuffs down his sweater.
And Gerald is immaculately dressed in a suit and a top, overcoat and all this stuff.
Yeah. And then he says something like, Billy's in a dead end position, and I'm a junior vice president at 23, and I'll have so and so's job by the time I'm 25, and blah blah blah.
I'll be a millionaire by 30.
Yes. Well, what made me giggle was, if you are not in a bank, the title of junior vice president seems really impressive, but I have learned that banks have 24 junior vice presidents, and it's not a reflection of anything you've done. It's just that you've been there long enough to get that job. So I feel like this is showing an inflated sense of his self-importance, which is, I'm probably reading more into it than necessary, but.
Oh, no. I mean, he's 100% he's self-inflating. He would definitely take that title and make more of it than it actually is.
Yes.
And hold it over people as if it's something, for sure.
Yes.
So, we get through all this fun stuff because we're going to quickly start to go downhill from here.
Reality is going to be like a cold bucket of water.
Yes. So we get home, we're introduced to Kate, to Billy's mom, which I don't know Billy's mom's name.
I don't think we ever find out.
Billy's mom is her name. And we're also quickly introduced to the fact that the family is living amongst all of the dad's inventions, and none of them work.
No.
They're all horrible. He's got an invention that's supposed to crack eggs, and it just destroys the eggs and puts all the shells into the bowl as well. And every invention that he has, they're all horrible.
Yeah. I have to say that
but mom is so patient, and she tries to use all of them.
I was about to say that it's very sweet of her to insist on using the dad's inventions, because if that were me, dad's not there to see. I'm just going to crack the eggs by hand. I'm just going to, whatever.
Or just answer the phone instead of using
the regular way.
This weird, because this was also 1984. So cordless phones were probably existed, but were not really a commonplace thing. They literally have a rotary phone, and he has figured out some kind of wireless thing where he can to use it, and of course it doesn't work.
That was actually kind of a neat thing. The thing to crack the eggs, I don't think the world has been needing.
Right, and then there are inventions that he makes that are basically other things that already existed, and he makes them worse. Like there's a juicer that we're introduced to a little bit later. The dad's he's just hopeless with his inventions. So anyway, Rand the dad gets home, and everybody's happy to see him. And we've got to check off. When Billy comes home and closes the door, sword falls off. They have these two crossed swords, and you don't introduce a sword that falls off the wall in the first act if you're not going to use it.
Yes. So just take note of that right there. Right.
So the sword falls off. The sword also falls off when Dad comes home, and everybody puts the sword back up.
Yeah, this is just a perennial.
It's just a thing. It just happens every time someone slams the door.
I have to say, I appreciate that for all of their, you assume, financial hardship and just sort of the annoyance of you have this dad who makes his living making things that don't really work. It's still a healthy family and they all love each other, which I appreciate. Yeah. It would be very easy to be like, oh, my dad, I hate him. He's crazy, or had a tense marriage or, whatever. But that's not what this is. So that's nice to see.
Yeah. And Mrs. Deagle even makes a jab at Billy saying that he basically, or it might be Gerald, that he basically supports the family because his father's so lame. I think it's Miss Deagle. Yeah. So anyway, here Rand is back and he's got his gift. We remember that that he bought in Chinatown, right?
Yes.
And so he gives it to Billy. Turn the lights down, right? And he gives the box to Billy, and he's like, "Oh, what is it? A puppy? Is it a puppy?" Because it's going.
Yes, and he starts to shake it, and no, don't shake it, but let's open it. And it is a Mogwai.
The Mogwai.
Yeah.
So we get it. We get it down. We get our first reveal of Gizmo, and one of the things in this movie that I think really sells Gizmo as a real thing is the puppets are really good. So they have two different. Let me explain to you how these movies work. They have like two different puppets of Gizmo. They have the one that's in the scene.
It's a puppet.
I know, right? I know you. So you may have thought it was a 16-week-old baby in a costume. But it wasn't. It was also not a small orangutan. They have these puppets that are they're in the scenes with the humans, and they're they're to scale for the Mogwai scale, and the Mogwai is about the size of like a teddy bear or something. Like he's not very big. And then they do these close-ups. And the puppets are far more detailed and probably much bigger, I'm assuming. But they're really they have great articulation and all sorts of stuff going on under the muzzle and all this just stuff just all moving very realistic looking, and everything's like weirdly wet and just nose is wet.
They kind of look like Teddy Ruxpin, come to think of it.
Maybe a little bit, because he had those eyes that moved. And their eyes move kind of like that. Yeah. So Gizmo, I think, is sold really well as a living thing. They stick to the strengths. Like they don't have him walking around.
Yeah,
they stick to the strengths. It's like because it would be like when Kermit walks. Like when they show scenes where Kermit walks and you're just like, that's not right.
Breaks the fourth wall.
Kermit is not designed to walk. Like he's designed to sit on Jim Henson's lap.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's a ventriloquist dummy. Like he's not designed to walk.
Yeah.
He's no Rolf or whatever. Like he's not one of the ones that just is basically like a human inside of a costume. He's not Big Bird. So anyway, it's really sold right away that Gizmo feels like a real thing. And of course, because we are introducing him to the family, we got to get the rules recap, right? There's a point where the mom takes a picture and it's light bright. And then Rand's got to like, hold on here. We got to tell you the rule. Yeah. And he explains the rules, gets it all down, and it's a big responsibility. Okay. So, and we're treated all this, we're treated to these different scenes from here that really don't bear out talking about that much. Corey Feldman's character comes over, and you're introduced to him. He brings him a Christmas tree, and yada yada yada. And we see the orange juicer that doesn't work. And
also pay attention. Juicer makes a mess. Yeah. Sprays things all over the kitchen.
Yeah,
just take note.
Yeah. And so then now we're going to start to get down to the nitty gritty here, because when Corey is over, he accidentally knocks over a cup that has brushes in it.
It's like a
because if we didn't mention Billy he's a comic artist, he's also just an artist in general. So he has all these paints and stuff, and it's got the brushes in it. Goes on a Gizmo, boom, he starts screaming and wiggling around, and 5 little puffballs pop off of him, and they end up turning into 5 more Mogwai.
Yeah.
A couple of them look more or less like Gizmo. One of them looks kind of doofy. And then the 5th one, or the first one that pops off, is Stripe. because he has a stripe of hair, like a mohawk, a white mohawk that kind of sits up on top of his head. And, these guys are like, they're cute. And Feldman comes over and he's like, oh, you're cute. You're so cute. And Stripe snaps at him. Yeah. So you kind of immediately start to get the idea. And Gizmo is also kind of very standoffish about these other 5. Mm-hmm. They named him Gizmo. The Mogwai. Mm-hmm. Rand named him Gizmo. Sorry about that. We missed that. So they you just immediately know something's up with these 5. Like they're not normal. And why would there be a rule about not getting them wet if the only thing that happens when you get them wet is they multiply? That just must be their only way of multiplying, right? Yeah,
you get the impression that like these are secondary copies, and so they maybe original line Mogwais are sweet and docile and friendly, but secondary ones are not, or we don't go into that too much, but yeah, the idea is like
they're like the grandson of the king. Like there's just too much degeneration of genetic material by the time it gets down there.
I feel like this is a trope you've seen in a lot of movies where like there's a cloning or a duplication or something, and then the further you get from the original, the worse they are. They're just either evil or stupid or whatever.
May I suggest you watch Michael Keaton in Multiplicity?
That is what I was thinking of.
There you go.
I have not seen it, but but that's what I was thinking. Yeah,
I wouldn't say it qualifies for this show from my point of view. It's not like one of my favorite movies. It's just something that I saw that was like, okay.
Fun, yeah.
So we may or may not do it. I don't know. So anyway, So we kind of get treated to the fact that, again, Gizmo's not 100% okay with these. And we get our first sort of inclination that maybe something's up when in the middle of the night, we get a shot of him and Stripe is he's like awake. He like wakes up and starts moving a little bit. And then we hear Barney, the dog, whimpering. And Billy goes to see what's wrong.
And Barney is outside on the front porch hanging from some Christmas lights, and not hanging in a way that he's hurt, but just sort of strung up and stuck.
Yeah, whimpering.
So, and they assume that this is Mrs. Deagle somehow.
Right, because she's already threatened the dog.
Come after the dog. So they rescue him, and, everything's fine, but let's be careful. And nobody suspects Stripe.
Yeah, no one says, because at this point they haven't revealed themselves as being anything more than just kind of edgy.
Yeah, like, and they're little, and you wouldn't think they have the dexterity or anything like that.
But they have cooperation on their side. Maybe.
Yeah, it's unclear how it actually happened.
Oh, it's unclear how a lot of things happen in regards to the 5 Mogwai and then the Gremlins, and we'll get into that as we reveal the Gremlins. But so because of this, Rand is like, okay, well, look, I'm going out of town on a convention anyway, so I'm gonna bring Barney with me. And I don't know if this was just done to just so they didn't have to deal with puppets and a dog on set or something, but it was just just for 2 acts of this movie, the dog is just going to be gone.
No dog. Yeah. And I missed that part. And all of a sudden I was like, where's the dog? What happened?
Yeah. So he goes out of town with Rand to go to his, dumb inventors convention.
Yeah.
And the story keeps moving here back in the homestead at Kingston Falls. Billy, of course, doesn't really understand what's happened. He doesn't really, understand the Mogwai at all. And what do you do when you have something of a biological nature and you don't understand it?
You go to your town's one science teacher at the high school, because that's the only person who knows anything about science.
Also the only black person in the whole town.
Yes. Played, by the way, by Glenn Turman, I think is his name, who was Colonel Taylor on A Different World.
You've seen him in a lot of stuff.
Well, I know him from A Different World, and I
know him from several other movies, but I do know him from A Different World.
He's fun to watch. Have you seen Cooley High, Harmony? Is that Cooley High is the movie? Take always wanted to see that.
I don't know.
Okay,
I don't know.
Anyway, I know he's in that. Anyway, he's fun to watch, but don't get too attached to him. So
so we take Gizmo. And Billy, having learned nothing, is like, hey, check this out. And he drips one drop of water on Gizmo, which causes another Mogwai to pop out. Yeah. And so the professor is like, it was Professor Hansen. Yeah. I think he may not even be a professor.
No,
I'm giving him that honorary.
He's not a professor.
Everyone would call him Professor Hansen, even whether he is or not. They'd just be like, hey, what's up, prof?
Sure.
So that was my kid in 1984. That's exactly how they talk.
Just exactly how they talk.
Radical. Cowabunga. So Professor Hansen's like, I got to have this. Like, you got to let me keep this. I want to figure out what it is. So, I'll kind of help you out, but you got to leave this one with me.
I'm going to run some tests, he says, because that's what my high school science teacher did all the time.
Oh, just full lab at his
unauthorized tests in the building.
Small town high school, full microbiology lab.
It's BSL 3 here. Yeah.
So there you go. Hanson's off. He's off to do his adventures with this Mogwai, and Billy heads off and meets up with Kate, and then for some reason Billy loves Christmas, and he's talking about how much he loves Christmas, and Kate's like, not everybody loves Christmas.
What do you mean?
Yeah. Why? What do you mean? What was her line? Do you remember her line?
Oh, no, I don't. What was it?
Like when some people are opening up gifts, other people are opening up their wrists.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Kate's got a dark side. I feel like if you give her a little bit of time, Kate's going to go punk or goth, and
Kate does not like Christmas.
No.
So anyway, she's explaining just like, hey, not everybody loves Christmas, okay? Like, and Billy's like, what are you, a Hindu? Like.
Because at that point, that was the only other religion anybody could think of.
But also in 1984, like, there was just no concept that you wouldn't be Christian and you wouldn't be religious at all. Like, what are you? Some other religion that doesn't celebrate Christmas?
Yeah.
So this is just, kind of building up the relationship between Billy and Kate, and they get their little sweet moment where he asks her on a date or whatever.
Yeah, he's walking her home at this point after she helped what's-his-face get
Futterman
out of the bar.
Right. Oh, that's why they're together, right? Because Mr. Futterman is now getting drunk. Because I think, if I remember correctly, he discovered that his all-American Kentucky Harvester is actually filled with foreign parts.
Yes.
And he hates some goddamn foreign parts.
And then he's talking about gremlins in the cab, right? Gremlins in the engine.
They put gremlins. That's what them foreigners do. They put gremlins in all their parts. There's car stereos and their radios that you put on your head and all that stuff.
Yeah. So I was starting to feel a little uncomfortable with all the ranting about foreigners. Looking through a 2020 lens, I was like,
Mr. Futterman is harmless. Come on.
Until you elect him to office.
So yes. Oh Lord. Yes. So anyway, So you're right. They had helped Mr. Futterman not drive drunk home. And he's walking Kate home, and she hates Christmas.
Yes.
And we only mention that because it's going to come up again. Yeah. We're going to find out why Kate hates Christmas, and it's
a whopper.
It's a thing, man. So anyway, Billy's back home now, and it's getting late, but it's not midnight yet. And the kids, the 5, Stripe and his buddies, they're rambunctious, man. They're making noise. Like, Gizmo's just sitting there watching television, hanging out. Billy immediately starts using television as a babysitter for Gizmo when he gets him. So
very, very 80s parenting, I have to say.
Oh yeah.
Spot on.
So Gizmo starts watching these old movies like Invasion of the Body Snatchers and stuff, and he gets these
then one with Clark Gable in it that
where he's a driver.
I don't know what that
race
is.
Race car driver. I don't know what it is either.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's a classic and we should know. Shame on us, but. Yeah. So anyway, so Gizmo's watching these movies. He's looking at like a 3D comic book, So Gizmo's just like taking it all in. He's loving this new life that he's got.
Yeah.
But the crew over here, they're making all sorts of noise, and Billy's
sort of being noisy and not really doing anything, and
And Billy's just like, okay, well, it's like 11:35, so no harm. And he goes to the kitchen, and like everybody in the fridge, just has a plate of chicken legs,
just uncovered, sitting there,
and his kid,
as you do.
Hey, Mom, I'm going to feed this dozen chicken legs to the Gizmos.
I'm sure it was meant to be, dinner for the next 3 nights. But
right, yeah. And remember that this family is basically supported by their son who works in a bank, and their worthless, do-nothing inventor father who can't get a job is, just apparently buying up all the chicken legs in town.
Yeah.
So anyway, he brings the chicken legs in. He drops them in the box where they're all at, and they just and there's some great close-ups of the more animated puppets, just like
and it's
going at the chicken.
Yeah, and they're like chicken legs and thighs, and they're all greasy and
stringy. Like when they pull off, there's it was snaps, and
that's why I don't like dark meat chicken, because it's all like that. It's just like
hey, take that back.
I didn't have a chicken breast until I was probably in high school, and I thought, because my mom only served dark meat chicken, because it was cheaper.
Yeah.
And I thought that it didn't like chicken because it was just so all the skin and it's not my thing at all.
Meanwhile, me as a kid, I'd figured out a way to determine which of the McDonald's chicken nuggets were dark meat so that I could trade with people and just get all their dark meat chicken nuggets. The round ones were usually dark meat, not the one with the little foot on it. Round ones are usually
I thought they were all the same.
They are now. They have been for years. But when I was a kid, there were dark meat chicken nuggets and white meat chicken nuggets.
Oh.
The round ones were generally the dark meat, and the white ones with the little foot were the ones that were shaped like a boot. Those were the ones that were usually white meat.
Okay, that's troubling that it's shaped like a foot. I mean,
I'm sure it's supposed to be shaped like a chicken thigh or something. I don't know, or whatever.
Okay, well,
anyway,
yes.
So he feeds him the chicken, and
he's looked at the clock, and the clock says like 11:35. So
following the rules, man. Following the rules.
So then we have a flash over at the high school. The professor is also doing some tests. Professor, teacher, whatever. Takes a little bit of blood from the Mogwai. We never find out what that's for. That's just
it's for a blood test.
Sure.
Why else do you take blood for a blood test?
It's a full medical facility. We can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's sitting there right next to he's got the Mogwai in a cage, and is doing some stuff on paper, taking notes, doing very important calculations.
He's doing science.
The clock behind him says like 2:15.
Yeah, prominently positioned clock yes. Showing us very clearly it is now.
Yes. And if you recall, I don't think that Billy ever told him the rules.
Right. I don't think that he did.
I don't think he did.
I mean, let's assume that he did off camera, but still.
But it didn't register. So
the point is, he doesn't feed the Mogwai.
Well,
he doesn't specifically feed it.
True. He just leaves his sandwich on the table and then leaves for the night. And the Mogwai is like, "Well, don't mind if I do. Let me send out the pickers."
That's within reach of my stubby arms. So he gets the peanut butter sandwich or whatever it was, and he eats it.
Yeah. And then we flash back to Billy's room, and we can see his clock, and it has not moved.
Sure.
It still says 11:35. So that's when you start to think, oh, I don't know.
And then to remove all doubt, we see the pods.
Yeah.
So Billy wakes up the next day to 5 big boogers on his floor.
Yeah.
These weird green pods with all this like sticky webbing coming off of them.
They're just gross. And he calls his mom up, and his mom goes through the rules. Did you get them wet? Did you feed them after midnight? No, I checked. I look. Still says 11:35.
Yeah.
And he pulls out the cord, and it's been chewed through.
It's frayed. What's happening? What's going on?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, immediately we the things that we had been seeing, the breadcrumbs that we've been given to let us know that maybe these guys were not the 5, Stripe and his bros were not
they're not docile.
They were not on the up and up.
Gizmo.
Yeah. They are actively trying to violate the rules. And they have now. Yeah. So also get a flash over to the school, and the one in there, of course, also in a pod. Now it was in like a hamster cage. So it's like it's stuck in this hamster cage. Like the pod grew, and the cage is like straining to contain it. So they're having to like cut it out.
Yeah.
Of the cage and all this stuff.
And the teacher explains that it's
the pupal stage.
Yeah, it's like a chrysalis basically.
Yeah,
so
it's like a moth
metamorphosing in there. And we're just like, okay, well, that's happening.
Yep. And by this point, the marketing material had already spoiled the Gremlins. Like, so you knew what was gonna pop out of this. Because there's a poster for the movie, which is literally like a movie poster with Stripe like popping out of it,
busting through,
smoking a cigarette or something. I don't know what he was doing. So anyway, yeah, it's time for Gremlins. So the pods. Billy goes off to work or whatever, and the pods hatch. We get another Miss Deagle scene thrown in there, just to remind us that she's the worst person ever in the world, and there's the Gremlins. So the first one that hatches is the one in the science lab, and it hatches during class, right at the end of class. It hatches out. They're watching a film strip on the hearts, human heart, animal hearts, rabbit hearts, all this stuff.
Film strips, you see, kids, are from before we had.
I don't think it's technically it's not a film strip. It's a 35 millimeter film, because a film strip is where it goes boop, and then like the A+ kid gets to turn it.
Right.
Like whoever's the best, the most well behaved kid in class gets the privilege of turning it to the next slide while the audio plays from the tape recorder.
Oh, yes.
But yeah, anyway, they're watching something. They're not just like watching this on their iPads or whatever,
right?
Or their Chromebooks.
The Elmo smartboard. Yeah,
they're literally projecting this with a movie projector onto a screen, and so that means we've got this atmosphere. All the lights are down and the blinds are pulled. It's nice and dark because, of course, you can't have full bright light or the gremlins.
And the cage is at the back of the classroom, and the teacher is standing back there and kind of looks over and is like, "What's that noise?" It's I don't, and there's a little bit of tension, like because this thing's going to bust out and it's going to be dangerous, and so you're thinking, is he going to bust out and eat all these 12-year-olds? I mean, they're annoying, but not that annoying, But it's fine. The bell rings and they all leave, and the teacher goes to the back of the classroom and sees that the pod is now
busted,
empty, and so the thing is skittering around somewhere. We don't know.
Yeah, and so he runs and he calls Billy at work, and he says it hatched. Billy had hatched, and then runs back. He buys a Snickers bar from the vending machine and runs back into the class to try to lure it. So Billy immediately says, "I'll be right there." So he heads to the school. It's not clicked yet for Billy in his head that, there are 5 of these
at
my house with my mom.
Yeah.
But he's heading to the school, and Hanson's trying to, he's trying to figure it out. He's trying to, come on out. Oh, you're not still mad about that little blood test, are you? That's not a big deal. Come.
Spoiler. It is.
He's still mad.
Mad.
Come get this candy bar. It's delicious. You're probably hungry, right? And I like the logic here because this thing's just gone through a metamorphosis. So it's definitely probably, it's hungry.
And
so he's like,
Snickers, is that what you feed?
What was the Snickers slogan?
Snickers really satisfies you.
Yeah. Okay,
yeah. Well, there you go. There you go. So he's sticking his hand under his desk trying to coax the thing to come out. Well, it doesn't come out. He gets pulled under.
Yeah, and when Billy arrives, he finds that Hanson is dead, and the
syringe is in his back.
It's in his buttock.
This is Mogwai who holds a grudge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So Billy has a brief encounter here with the Mogwai. With the gremlin. I'm sorry, it's not a Mogwai anymore. Mogwais are good ones.
Okay.
He has a brief encounter with the gremlin, and we get a good jump scare that you got there, where Billy reaches for the phone, and the gremlin's claw comes up over and slices his hand.
Yeah.
And he has a little back and forth with it in the school, which ultimately just ends with the gremlin escaping
through the vents,
through the vents or something. Yeah. And he encounters it again in the first aid room, and but eventually he realizes, oh man, my mom, she's at home with 5 of these.
Yeah, I can't get this one, so this one's a lost cause, so I'm just gonna go home. Meanwhile, Mom's at home decorating the ugliest Christmas cookies I have ever seen. These things are weak. I mean, they look like a 5-year-old did them.
Now, some of them looked better. Like later on, we see a couple of them, and they looked better. I think she was maybe just coasting on the last few.
Maybe.
Because she was just slathering yellow icing onto this gingerbread man.
That was kind of a mess. Not that mine would look any better.
Oh, no, yours would look great there.
No. Frosting cakes, that's all I can do, not cookies.
So mom hears ruckus from upstairs. She's like, what's going on? And we get flashes of upstairs, and the gremlins are basically just abusing Gizmo because they're like, oh, he's weak, he's a puss. Yeah. And they're like, they got him on a dartboard, they're throwing darts at him. Just in general, they're just bullying him around.
At some point they toss him down the laundry chute.
Yes.
Which was my favorite part, just because I love laundry chutes.
Yes.
I wish we had one.
I wish we had a laundry. Yes. We have a 2-story house, so I wish we had a laundry. We have reason to have a laundry chute.
I wonder if we could put one in. I don't know.
You can do anything if you put your mind to it. I mean, you specifically, because I don't want to be involved in this. So anyway, now Mom gets up there, comes up and she sees the weird busted open pods, and Billy calls her, and he's like, "Mom, you got to get out of the house, Mom." Click.
Yeah, because the gremlins have cut the phone cords.
And this is where it starts, because not only do the gremlins know what phones are, they know where in the house to go to cut the main line. And this is going to happen throughout the rest of the movie, where the gremlins are going to seemingly have knowledge of things that, considering that they were all spawned from a single Chinese mythological creature, they should not otherwise have.
Yes.
So they're going to have we'll highlight some of this as we go through. But yeah, so somehow Stripe or whichever one of them knows how to pull the phone line. So he pulls the phone line and it's on for Mom.
Yeah.
She's got one of the kitchen knives and she's heading down and she's trying to figure it out. What's going on down here? Yeah.
And she peeks in the kitchen and she sees one of the gremlins eating all her Christmas cookies.
The good looking ones. Yeah.
Yes. And getting all the stuff all over his
icing,
face.
Frosting
and,
everywhere.
Whatever. And she goes around. The kitchen has 2 doors, it seems, because she goes into the kitchen a couple different ways. But
probably.
And one of them is sitting in the juicer, which we saw earlier.
Yeah, it's the juicer or blender or something. I don't know. Something. It's something. Anyway, we'll call it the juicer for the purposes of this.
Anyway, sitting in the business end of the juicer, and she reaches in and presses the power button, and it just immediately gets sucked in and sprayed all over the kitchen.
Yeah, a lot of good gore. Yeah, just the green blood everywhere. Yeah. Everywhere.
I'm imagining this in a movie theater. I feel like that would have been a great applause moment. Just.
And mom handles herself pretty well.
She does.
She offs, I think, all of them, but Stripe and one other.
Yeah, one of them gets put in the microwave.
Yeah, she just straight up sprays it with flea and tick, or like a flea hornet spray or something, and then puts it in the microwave and microwaves it, and it blows up in a great way.
Yeah,
and then the other one, she just straight up stabs it with one of the kitchen knives, just like murders it.
Yeah, well, and then another one is hiding in the living room in the Christmas tree.
Yeah,
and she's in there. I think she's trying to ascertain how many are left. And it pops up behind her and tackles her, and it's on top of her, and it's trying to...
There's a little bait and switch where there's something moving in a stocking that definitely looks big enough to hold a gremlin, and then she's backing up to the tree, and you get this great moment where the red eyes of the gremlin blend in with the lights of the Christmas tree, and then it jumps, and the whole Christmas tree comes down on her. And then this gremlin is just has her face down on the floor with Christmas lights, and he's just choking the hell out of her.
Yeah, these guys got violent very quickly. Yeah. I don't know where they got these tendencies from.
The gremlins, they have these swings, right? Like there are parts of this movie where the gremlins are just straight up slapstick, silly, and then they immediately flip a switch and they are evil murder machines.
Yeah.
So anyway, Billy comes home and sees what's happening, sees his mom getting like in a camel clutch from a gremlin basically, and is like, oh my God. And he remembers the sword that always falls off the wall, and he grabs it and he slices the head right off of this gremlin, and it
gets it into the fireplace,
flies into the fireplace.
Boom. Yeah.
And okay, mom's okay, good. And then we see Stripe, the final one of the 5. So like if we can get this guy, it's over. Like this is the end of it. Stripe blows his nose on a curtain. I enjoyed that part. Like they're trying to make him like punk rock, because punk rockers are always like blowing snot out of their nose and like doing gross stuff. Yeah, blows his nose on the curtain and smashes out the window. He escapes. So oh no, he's escaped. We got to do something about it, right? Mom's okay, but she's shaking. So we take her to the neighbor's house, and here goes Billy. He's going after Stripe.
Yeah.
Where are we at? We're losing our place.
Yeah.
Okay. So he tracks Stripe down. Stripe ends up at the YMCA.
Yeah.
And in one of the scenes that I think is like one of the coolest, Stripe jumps in the pool.
Yeah.
And it starts bubbling, and green lights and red lights.
And there was a little bit, I think, of that smoke and stuff coming from the pods earlier. But this is like, I mean, this is like Wicked Witch of the West cauldron. Like everything is just, and Billy is like, I'm getting the heck out of here because this is nothing good.
Yeah, Billy basically goes for it. And so one of the things about this scene that I really liked, and this is it's the scene itself, but it links to something. So I'll take this moment we'll go on an aside here.
Okay.
This scene in particular was represented in a really kind of scary way for me as a kid. In the tie-in, you okay over there? Mm-hmm. In the tie-in storybook and record combination that you could get from Hardee's restaurants.
Oh man!
Now I don't think Hardee's was ever a nationwide chain, and now they're owned by Carl's Jr.
We had Hardee's,
right? I don't know if it was on the West Coast. I'm not sure.
Okay, yeah, but
right, Hardee's was a major American fast food chain. It was like the 4th one behind all the others.
Yeah, it was the Fox.
But
the 80s.
Hardee's had the best tie-ins. They had the moose cups. They had Christmas cups, like full on, just like glasses that had graphics on them. And you'd go and you'd get like a combo or whatever, and you'd pay like 99 cents, and they'd just hand you a straight up 16-ounce glass made of glass with like a Star Wars Christmas scene on it.
I don't remember.
They always had the best. They had the best stuff. The California raisins. They did the California raisins promotion. My mom and I once stayed in line for 45 minutes to get a California raisin. And it was just a small, like 2-inch tall plastic figurine of one of the California raisins. And Hardee's missed.
They're still around.
No, they are a shell of their former self, a shadow.
I am quite certain that my parents went to great lengths to keep me and my brother from knowing that fast food restaurants had these tie-ins.
Oh yeah,
because that was frivolous, and why would 100%. We do that?
So. They protected you from that. They were protecting you, really.
We were
from the consumerism.
Yes. Look at me now. Right. I'm practically a Quaker. I don't purchase anything ever.
So anyway, Hardee's had great stuff. That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
I grew up as a Happy Meal kid, but as soon as I was old enough to know what was up, I was like, man, this stuff from Hardee's. So you could go to Hardee's and you could buy for 99 cents. You could buy and they did a different one every week, as I recall, the storybook, and it was like, I think there was 5 of them. So the whole movie was broken up into these 5 audio stories it was a 45 record that you played on your Fisher-Price record player.
Yeah.
The red one that was also a suitcase, so you could take it to your friend's house.
I wanted that so bad.
I had that.
Oh man. That and the Snoopy snow cone machine.
Really
wanted those.
I wanted the Snoopy snow cone machine.
Yeah.
So anyway, so this scene in particular, the way it was represented in that, and I can't find the clip. I'm sure if I looked harder, I could probably find the clip of the actual pool scene. But just to give you an idea of what these books were like, it had the voice of the guy was very distinct.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a very Rand Peltzer was he was like he had a voice, like just one of those voices.
Okay.
And I'll play you a little snippet here.
Okay.
And I always remember the chime for turning the page. We were talking about film strips earlier, where you roll the film to the next film strip to the next one. This was the same way. Read along with me. And when you hear the chime,
I do remember that concept because one time I made one of those for my brother.
Oh,
I took a glass of water and a spoon, and bong, and he didn't appreciate it at all.
He probably not. That sounds like your brother.
Yeah.
Okay, so here let's give you a little sample of this, just so you can see what I'm dealing with.
Okay.
This is the story of the gift of the Mogwai. You can read along with me in your book. You will know it is time to turn the page when you hear the chimes ring like this. Let's begin now. It was Christmas time, and Rand Peltzer needed a gift. Uptown, busy shoppers rushed here and there, buying ties and toys and other typical presents. But Mr. Peltzer decided he wanted to do his shopping in Chinatown.
And there you have it. That's what it is, right?
Oh, man.
And yeah, great. I mean, hey, you got to understand, this was a big deal back then. Like, you think like being able to scan some QR code and get a dumb app with your Happy Meal is cool. Like, this was cool.
I was about to say, yeah, I feel like tie-ins were much more elaborate and therefore much more interesting when we were kids.
Absolutely.
Now it's just, here's a mass-produced stuffed thing that may or may not work.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No. And so this was not only just that guy, but they had lines from the movie and they had recreations. And then sometimes they had stuff in there that wasn't even like, they added stuff, kind of like if you ever see the novelization that they always do of like popular movies that they sell at the book fair. They just add things. And I'm pretty sure it's because they make those based on the script.
I was about to say, I read the novelization of Back to the Future once, and there's this whole side plot about something, and I was like, that's not. I've seen this movie many times. That's not in there. And it's very confusing. But yeah, I figured it was a cutscene.
So that particular one, I watched that entire one that I just started playing there. And the scene at the beginning where Rand deals with the shop owner, in the book version of it, for some reason, there's just a lady in the shop that he tries. She's the one he tries to pitch the travel buddy to, and then he hears the Mogwai and walks into a back room where the old man's smoking a pipe, and the Mogwai is there in the box with the old man. So the scene in the actual movie is there's no woman.
Interesting.
There's just the kid. There's the kid, and he drags him down to the basement. And then there's a woman at the counter that he pitches to. And then he finds the old man and the Mogwai in the back. So the woman is just not even in the movie at all. Like,
budget cuts. We gotta get rid of somebody.
We gotta speed this up. We got pacing issues.
Yeah.
Speaking of pacing issues, you guys still here? All right. So that was my thing. And the recreation of that one, it's in like the second or third book, is just terrifying because they have all these like screechy, weird gremlin noises and the bubbling of the water and and just like the way the narrator guy is selling it. And and just like the screeching sounds of them after they've kind of come out of the water and they're heading to the door. And I believe the illustration was of Billy running from the YMCA, and the scenes in the movie, running from the YMCA, and then you can see all of the gremlins like silhouetted in the door of the YMCA. I don't think you see that in the movie.
I don't think so.
But you do get the impression there's like lights flashing and sounds and stuff, and you get the impression that, it's happening. But yeah, that was terrifying. But I have to give a shout out to those books because they were great. I had all 5 of them. Oh, man. And I wish I still had them. And that one was great. Do you
suppose your mom still has them?
Oh, no chance.
That's too bad.
That one was great because they even, you could tell that audio was taken right from the 45 because you could hear the
crackles and everything. Yeah. Well, I think that's interesting. Sometimes showing something makes it not scary anymore.
Yeah.
But when you just have the aura of the thing, sometimes it's scarier. It's interesting to see, sometimes we just read from a book club. We read The Exorcist, and there was all these things about, it's the scariest book ever. Reading it was not scary at all, but the movie is terrifying.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's the other way around. Reading about it is scary, and then you see it in person and you're like,
yeah. So
anyway.
that was definitely the case with those books. Yeah. Like it was so much, because this movie is borderline. Like, we were thinking of whether or not we should watch this with our 10-year-old. And I was kind of like, I don't know. It's got some scary parts, because this movie was 100%. Like, I probably watched this. This came out in 84. Mm-hmm. And I was definitely getting these tie-ins. So I was 5, 6 years old, whatever. And movies stayed in theaters a lot longer back then, because VHS wasn't really a thing in 84. So, I was probably watching this in 85. I don't know. But yeah, I was like 6 years old watching this and was just like, yeah, it's cool. Like, that dude's murdered. That's fine.
Well, I think he would have been mostly fine.
I think he would have been mostly okay. But this is just one of those classic 80s movies where it's like just a little bit over the edge. Like the whole why does Kate hate Christmas thing.
Yes.
Pretty heavy.
As with many 80s movies, you loved it as a kid, and then you get ready to show it to your own kids, and you think, let me watch it through one time just to be sure. And then you're like, no. I don't think I can ever show him Back to the Future, because it's just
there's stuff in there. Yeah. So anyway,
so Billy has gone to the cops.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. You're picking up where I'm leaving.
Finally involving the law in this, and he's trying to explain, like, no, seriously, this is...
Yeah, the cops, they're just, there's one cop there. There's just 2 cops. There's a sheriff and his deputy or whatever, and the deputy's drunk already.
Because it's Christmas Eve.
Because it's Christmas Eve. So he's drunk. He doesn't care. And they're explaining it to him, or he's explaining it to them, and they're not buying it. So he shows them the Mogwai. And now they're like, okay, yeah, sure, but that's not a real thing. And in the meantime, what we find out while he's trying to convince the police, this wave of gremlins, has made it out into the world, and they are wreaking absolute havoc.
I mean, it's like an army marching down the street.
Yeah,
I mean, at one point it says thousands, and it doesn't really look like thousands, but it's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's saying hundreds or thousands, like whatever, because you don't know. I mean, he doesn't know how much is that pool going to produce off of old Stripe. We don't know. So, but Stripe's got his army. Yeah, there's a great stop motion animation scene, because of course computer graphics didn't in their form didn't really exist. So yeah, there's this great stop motion animation that had to be just like a tedious thing to make. It's like 4 seconds of footage of like 100 of these gremlins walking out in the street. So they're just, again, they're just like, half of them are just like slapstick comedy. Like, hey, what if we rewired the traffic lights so that people had an accident?
Yeah.
And then the other ones are like, what if we hotwire Futterman's snowplow and drive it into his house and kill him and his wife?
Yeah. Did they get killed? I don't
know for sure.
We don't.
The response I think the cops get is there's some kind of accident. The Futtermans, their snowplow. So anyway, but some people definitely do get killed. Yeah. Like for instance, Mrs. Deagle.
Yes.
So we're introduced to Mrs. Deagle in her, little like palatial mansion, nicest house in town.
Mm-hmm. All of her with her many cats.
Many cats.
I hate how having multiple cats is seen as like, oh, that person's automatically creepy.
Right.
But it, whatever. And they're all named after currency.
Right.
Well, I assume one of them is Kopeck. which is, I think, Polish or Russian money, or was at the time. And then another one is dollar bill. And I don't know the rest, but I'm guessing, there's dinero, peso.
Yen and all that stuff.
All the,
Oh, I'm sure. But yeah, she's coming downstairs and, she's an older woman and she's been playing up this like bad heart or whatever, which, feels like a joke.
And when the dog jumped on her, she fell and she's like, oh, my hip. So, yeah.
So she's coming down the stairs, but she's coming down in one of these, and these still exist today, these chair lifts that bring you down your stairs. If you can't go up your stairs. So she's coming down in this chairlift and she gets down to the bottom. She's feeding the cats or whatever. And she hears carolers.
Mm-hmm. And she heads outside and, as with all evil, disgruntled people in movies, she hates happiness. She doesn't like anything cheerful, whatever. Of course, she has no one to spend Christmas Eve with. And she goes outside with a pitcher full of water to dunk on them. And it's a good thing she doesn't because it's a bunch of gremlins who are all singing to her. And she's terrified and rushes back inside. And they come in. And while she's fighting them off, they do some fiddling with her
one of them, while she's distracted by the carolers, one of them sneaks in and rewires her chair. Again, how does this gremlin know what this chair is?
Yeah.
How do they know, first of all, the carolers? Well, how do they know what caroling is? How do they know how to put on earmuffs and scarves?
How do they know that she's a terrible person and deserves this fate?
Well, I don't think that they care about that because they're indiscriminately going after people. Like,
sure, okay.
Is it justice that the Futtermans die because Mr. Futterman is a xenophobe? Like, no, not really. Yeah. So anyway, so one of them rewires her chair. So she immediately is like, oh, the demons have come for me. I'm not ready. I'm not ready to die. And she's like crawling and she gets back into her chair and she's like, I'm getting out of here. I'm going upstairs because for some reason being upstairs will save her.
Yeah.
And she's saying, I'm not ready. And
it moves her up the stairs, but at about 100 times speed. And there's multiple shots of her whizzing up the stairs. I mean, it looks like she's going up 50 stories. Yeah. And she gathers speed and then she is flung around and out the window and onto the street and just hits the
and is definitely dead.
Yeah.
And by this point, the police have been contacted and they are there when Mrs. Futterman shoots she shoots over the police car or whatever, and she's done.
Yeah.
And the cops are like, they're kind of maybe now starting to believe Billy and his shenanigans. And they see the town Santa Claus come running out of his house covered in gremlins. And they just roll up the window. They don't even save him.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, one of the gremlins has slid under the car and cut the brake line. Again, how does this gremlin know what a brake line is or a car?
Yeah.
We're just, it's a fun movie. We're having fun.
Yeah.
We already dealt with the fact that the rules are impossible to, if you really look at them, the rules are impossible to maintain. Okay, sure. How do these gremlins know how to wear clothes and cut brake lines?
Destruction is funny, kids. Just go with it.
It really is kind of like a Looney Tunes cartoon in a lot of ways. And so they cut the brake line and then the cops end up almost having a collision and then flying into some whatever, they end up, the cops are dead. We're assuming everybody that the gremlins hit, we're just assuming that they're dead. The Santa Claus, he's dead. Mrs. Deagle, she's dead. The Futtermans, they're gone.
Sure.
They're dead. Everybody's dead.
So meanwhile, we go over to the bar and Kate is working there and it reminds me of, Spaceballs, when at the end when the thing pops out of the guy's chest and it's a homage to Alien, but I have never seen Alien, so I don't. But it's just these creatures who are just being silly and malevolent and silly at the same time. And so they're all just sitting around and smoking 5 cigarettes at a time, and somebody's lying under the beer tap and drinking it all, and
even though beer's made of water,
right?
And so he should be exploding with many more gremlins, but he's not. And it's just this scene, like it's there.
It goes on for a long time.
Oh yeah. And somehow they have her sort of held hostage here, and she's serving them pretzels and drinks and whatever. And you just get this. It goes on. They sat in a room and said, "What could we have these guys doing? What's funny? Okay, well, they're playing poker, and then one of them's dressed up as a woman, and he's helping the one that's dressed as a woman is helping Stripe cheat at cards." But then she sees another guy cheating at cards, and so she tells Stripe, and Stripe shoots him with a gun.
Oh, I didn't get that. Okay.
She sees him pull an ace out.
Oh, okay.
And she tells Stripe, and Stripe is like, bang.
By that point, I was just like, okay, I get it. It's chaos. Can we move
and one
on
of them is like, everything goes quiet, and one of them's like a beatnik, like hanging out with a cigarette.
Yeah.
And, then another one comes up with puppets and is like doing, and then one of them is doing a maniac, doing a leg warmer, dancing routine.
It was a lot.
It was just a ton of stuff. It was just how many things can we fit in here? And it's all over the place, and it's just zany. And again, this is the Gremlins just being zany.
Mm-hmm.
Like, whereas before they've pretty much killed on sight every other person that they found. Somehow Kate is, by serving them, she's immune.
Even murder machines need a break, I suppose.
Yeah, pretzels and peanuts.
Yeah. So Billy has brought his mom to the neighbors, and they're gonna take care of her. And he goes to. Does he know Kate's there? Does he?
I don't know that he knows or not. He gets in his car. He drives off. This is after the cops. After the cops. We're pretty far past the mom at this point, but after the cops don't believe him and they go off to die. He's kind of driving through town and seeing all the shenanigans, and Kate kind of is like, well, this is not going to go well for me. And she figures out when she goes to light one of their cigarettes that they don't like bright light. I guess she figures out bright light. And so she grabs a Polaroid camera. And this was the thing that I was actually happy about, because she starts flashing them with this Polaroid camera.
Yeah.
And if you ever had a Polaroid camera like that, it has the flash that clicks onto the top.
Mm-hmm.
And that flash only had like 5 or 6 flashes.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had to pull it off and buy another flash.
Yeah.
So she starts flashing them, and she's getting closer to the door and closer to the door. And then one of them stops her, and he pulls out a gun. He's got a toboggan on. He's got like a mask on, like he's a robber.
Yeah.
And he pulls out a gun, and he's like pointing it at her. And she tries to flash him, and she's out of flashes.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, thank you. That's because a lot of times people have a 6-shooter in a movie and they shoot 12 times without reloading.
Right.
But like, she literally ran out of flashes. So I was like, oh, that's nice. That's nice. They actually done that. They actually did that. And it looks like it's all over for Kate when, again, Billy who was cruising around
with the bright lights.
Bright lights in the windows. And that gives Kate an opportunity to scram.
Yeah.
They run to the car, but the car, of course, goddamn poor car. It doesn't start. Yeah. So they have to take refuge in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
So they head over to the bank. And again, this is where I said in the director's cut, there's a mutilated Gerald in the corner showing us that he got justice for just being a jerk.
Being a jerk. Yeah. I mean, I don't think the Gremlins care if you're a jerk, but you want the jerk to get some justice. So
right. Yeah. And so when they get into the bank, I guess they're just like trying to get a breather here. And Kate says, "Great, now I have another reason to hate Christmas." And of course, Billy's like, what's the first reason? And she says, what?
And she said, so umpteen years ago when she was 9, she and her mother were waiting at home for her father to come home from work. They were decorating a Christmas tree, blah, blah, blah. And they waited for him to come home, and he didn't come home, and he didn't come home. And like 4 or 5 days go by, and they don't know what's going on. And they call the cops, and he's missing. And then she went to light a fire
because it was cold,
and there was a smell.
Mm.
And I thought this was going toward, and my mom had turned on the gas, and then the house exploded or something. But no, her father's body is stuck in the chimney because he was trying to climb down the chimney to surprise them on Christmas Eve. He was dressed as Santa, and somehow he broke his neck and died instantly.
He slipped while trying to shimmy down.
Yes. His body had been there decaying, and that was the smell.
That was the smell.
And she just delivers this, and it's not delivered, ironically or dark humor or anything. It's completely serious, but I was just like, what?
It's just like straight to camera. Like, she's just like telling this like wide-eyed, straight to camera. Like, and it's just, you're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, what? And then she ends it with a stinger, and that's how I found out there was no Santa Claus. And this is when we talked about, whether or not this is kid appropriate. Forget about the Santa Claus line. Like, just that story in general is just like, whoa, that's a little much.
Yeah.
So after she reveals her deepest emotional scar to Billy.
Billy does not say, "Will, I'm going to get out of here now.
I left the
iron on at home.
Yeah, I left an iron in the oven, and I got to get home to that.
Do that. So, but he's still, because she's Phoebe Cates, and she's still cute and nice and damaged, but who's not?
Yeah, that just means it's going to be easier to seal the deal.
Yes. So I think they look across the street and they see that Stripe is over there because the
no. I think you're getting out of order here.
Am I?
So they leave the theater and they leave the they leave the bank and they realize none of them are around. Where are they all at? They're all gone.
Okay.
Like where are they? And then they see. So Billy comments, well, they're going to be somewhere all together where they can be in the dark because it's almost sunrise. Mm-hmm. So, they start thinking, well, where could it be? And they zero in on the theater because I guess they're glancing around. They glance over at the theater and through the doors, the broken door, they see a gremlin. I don't think it's Stripe. Mm-hmm. And he is rummaging through the popcorn, the concessions.
Okay. Yes, I am out of order.
Yeah. And he's rummaging through the concessions, kind of getting the last of the popcorn out, and then goes into the theater. And they go into the theater to check, they kind of peek in, and all of the gremlins are there. And it's just this great scene of just like hundreds of the gremlins. This is full theater, and this isn't a movie theater like you're used to today where you go in the movie theater and there's like, 50 or 60 seats and they have these comfy chairs. And
this is a couple hundred. This is like when this is a one screen theater.
Like back in the day when you walked into a movie theater, it was this 45-degree downward slope that went on for about 60 yards.
Yeah.
And there was just row after row after row after row of seats. And, this is the only movie theater in town. So you assume, this is like, there's enough seats in there for everybody in town and plus a guest. And so it's this huge theater and there's all these different ones. Some of them have fashioned these popcorn bucket helmets where they've cut out eye holes and mouth holes and they're wearing them. And they've got all the different plunder that they've gotten from the town. Some of them are wearing hats and scarves.
And they're all watching Snow White. And apparently they all love it.
Yeah, there's the hi-ho, the song, and they all love it.
And we were thinking back, and I think that this came out in theaters again, I think around that time.
Yeah, a bunch of the Disney movies came out in theaters or in the 80s, because again, there was no VHS. So I know I saw Bambi. I said, I saw Bambi in theaters. Of course, I didn't see it when it first came out in the 60s or whatever, 30s, whatever it was.
I think. Yeah.
40s, 30s.
No.
So, they had re-released a bunch of these into theaters, so it made sense.
Well, it's sort of funny, though, because all the other movies that you see, like you see a snippet of It's a Wonderful Life, you see a snippet of that Clark Gable one, and those all have like callbacks or echoes in the story of the film, and this one is just there as a movie. So
it's just funny, something fun. Yeah. And I mean, I think they're probably just thinking like, well, we need something that would entertain these guys. Yeah. And they're all sort of entranced by the singing of the dwarves or whatever. Yeah. So. And Billy's like, all right, we got them. Like, they're all here. Let's do it. Let's wipe them. Let's get this done. Let's go to the boiler room. Let's turn on the gas.
Yeah, they plan to blow up the theater. So
yeah, so they go about their plan. They sneak behind the screen. They go into the basement. They start the gas. In the meantime, Stripe gets hungry. He wants some more goodies or whatever he says. And he goes to the concession stand, but there's nothing left. It's been ransacked. But through the window on the door, he sees the department store across the street has a display that just says in neon lights, candy. And then is literally just, the display window is just piled with like 4 inches of candy just in there, like a little, like a sea of candy.
Yeah.
So he heads across the street to get the candy. And Billy and Kate manage to rig up this fuse with like paper, and they light it on fire, and they start heading for the exit. But right about then, the reel breaks, because back in the day, movies came in multiple reels, and so you had to. There was literally a camera operator up there who had to get it ready. And as the one reel ended, the next reel began, and this movie went on seamlessly. But of course, despite their knowledge of film projectors and being able to and electricity and everything, and being able to actually start the movie.
Yes.
One of the one gremlin who actually knew the rest of the formula, it wasn't there.
Right.
He must have gotten killed earlier.
Yeah.
So boom, the screen goes to white, and without anything on the screen, the silhouette of Kate and Billy appears on the screen. The gremlins know they're there.
And the gremlins immediately give chase, but Kate and Billy close them in there.
just in time.
So yeah, and then boom,
kaboom,
boom, 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 fried gremlins, and you hear their little death wails.
Yeah. So we're good, right? But then we look over, and sure enough, there's Stripe
wreaking havoc in the department store, which I think is a Montgomery Ward.
Maybe. I didn't see for sure.
I saw a Montgomery Ward sign at some point, but
it had to be, because that would be the only department store in town, right?
They just say the department store.
The departments. He's in the department store.
Yeah.
So Stripe has survived, of course, because he's Stripe is the smart one.
Yes.
Speaking of smart, you notice these gremlins, like no one, the Mogwai, even nobody just bats an eye when Gizmo can like repeat English words.
Mm-hmm.
They're just like, oh, he's a pet. He's just a pet. And then he says, yummy and cool. And, he's light bright and all this stuff. Like, yeah, like he can talk and articulate thoughts. Like he's not like a parrot who is like, when the light is bright, he says light bright.
Yeah.
Like these things are intelligent beyond your understanding. And Stripe in particular is, intelligent
crafty.
And also evil. So
if only he could use his powers for good.
Yes, only if. So now it's on. Like we got this final showdown with Stripe. In the meantime, and this isn't really all that relevant, the dad has been making a journey back home, and Rand is coming home from his convention where he just obviously didn't do well. He's got Barney with him, and he's made a couple stops along the way to call back home, and he's not getting anybody. He's getting worried, whatever. So here he comes. He's on his way back.
Yeah, and he's driving through downtown.
Well, he's not. We're not there yet.
Okay,
but I'm just setting that scene that eventually Rand is going to pop up.
Yeah,
but we've had these scenes interspersed throughout this. And again, like Rand being there doesn't make it's not a difference maker, but just we've had these scenes interspersed throughout the different parts we've been talking about where Rand is calling home and selling a guy a smokeless ashtray that doesn't work and creates more smoke somehow than it should. So they follow him. They follow Stripe in, and because they got to get him, man. Like it's almost sunrise, but they know Stripe's going to go for more water because he's evil and smart, and Kate is sent off with Gizmo to figure out some ways to turn the lights on.
Because they know Stripe is somewhere in the store. It's all dark and turned off for the night, but you want the lights so you can find him, but also so he will be scared.
Yeah. So then there's this epic showdown with Billy and Stripe. Just Stripe is on a skateboard, and he's throwing saw blades.
He's coming at him with a chainsaw. I mean, he is going for blood.
He's got a crossbow at one point. It's just this fight to the death. And Billy is just he got an arrow in his arm.
Yeah.
He almost got cut in half with a chainsaw. All this crazy stuff. But luckily, Kate's fiddling with all the stuff in the control room. And luckily, Gizmo's just like, I ain't sitting here. Like, I got to do something. Because up until now, Gizmo has mainly been, he's like, without a doubt, the thing of the movie. Like Gizmo is the takeaway. Like he's the plush that you're going to sell, but he's been pretty inactive in the actual consequential parts of the story. He's just kind of been there. Like obviously he was there to get wet and to say light bright and to be leery of the five and all that stuff. But he's really not been participating that much. He's been in a backpack or he's been held in somebody's arms or whatever. And he's like, screw it. It's time for me to Gizmo instead of Gizzin less like I have been.
So he remembers this Clark Gable racing movie that he saw, and he gets in a mechanical
Barbie
car.
It's a Barbie Corvette. Oh, okay. Thank you very much. My cousin had it. It's a Barbie Corvette.
Barbie wasn't allowed in my house.
Yeah, so he gets in this pink Barbie Corvette that you were not allowed to own as a child, and he's driving. And he's remembering. Yeah, they do a little flash where he's remembering the lines from the Clark Gable movie, and he's going to be the hero. And this is something that they call back to in the second movie, where he watches television and he wants to emulate people on television. So he's driving and he's determined, and he ends up saving Billy, who is just about to be sawed in half by Stripe. Billy has a baseball bat that he's using to block this electric saw. Chainsaw,
but
that
saw
Stripe
is almost through it.
It's almost through it, and Gizmo pops over and
unplugs it, right?
No, he pops over and creates a distraction, and then I think I forget. We just watched this. Somehow Stripe gets knocked away, and the chainsaw digs into the floor.
Oh, yeah.
And it pulls him away.
That's true. And then it gets unplugged.
And then eventually the chainsaw sort of unplugs itself.
Yeah.
And then we're at the final moment here. Stripe is, he's got his no more chainsaw, but he just saw this fountain.
He's in what must be the garden department something, and there's it's one of these big elaborate fountains with a waterfall and spray and whatever, and Stripe is like,
Kate has unintentionally turned it on. And during the process of trying to get everything, she got the lights and everything now, and she's good. The lights might have been what distracted Stripe. I can't remember. Anyway, that might be the continuity. The lights distract Stripe so that he falls down with the chainsaw. And it's not important.
No,
it's not important.
It's embarrassing that we can't remember, but it's not important.
Minutes ago, you are enfeebled brains, just can't remember.
It's true. When you're in your 40s, kids, things go.
If you're old enough to remember the Fisher-Price, the suitcase record player,
right?
Then you probably couldn't remember the last 5 minutes of this movie either.
Yeah.
So anyway, he sees the fountain, and that's it. Like, he is going to do it. He is going to jump in the fountain.
And he's kind of doing the James Bond villain thing of just standing there like, I'm going to jump.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump.
Like, he's got his finger, and he's like, I'm going to
do it.
I'm going to put my finger in. Put my finger. And of course, again, in clear violation of the rules, he is in the fountain. He's holding on to the edge of the fountain with a hand that is touching water. Mm-hmm. And when he goes to put his finger in and they do like a close-up of him, water is splashing on his face. Mm-hmm.
But those droplets don't do anything.
Yeah. And so in the meantime, Rand got there and Barney got there, and there was, when Gizmo was driving the car, Barney's barking at him and, all this fun stuff. And he puts his finger in, and Stripe puts his finger in and starts to multiply. And then this is when here comes Gizmo. He jumps off of a snow shovel and slams into the wall. And Stripe is just like, good try, but you didn't do it. But luckily he lands right beside the shade, the pull for the shade
to let all the sun in.
And he sees it and he says, "Ooh!" And
by this point, it's like 6-7 in the morning, so the sun's
full on.
Yeah.
So Gizmo pulls the cord and gets pulled away just as Stripe tries to shoot him with a gun or something.
Yeah, I mean, this is a malevolent little
Stripe
critter.
finds a magnum after he loses his chainsaw. He gets like a magnum, and he tries to shoot.
Department stores when you could sell firearms and summer dresses in the same place
all at once.
Yeah,
and so here we go. Shades up, and boom, that's it. Stripe is in the sun,
and it's a pretty dramatic death.
Oh yes, it's gruesome and dramatic.
Just and falls in the water, and I thought, oh gosh, he's going to multiply when he's in the water, but no, done.
Yeah, he pops back out, but he's all gross, and then he turns into a skeleton
and then melts into the floor, and we're officially
but we did done. It, so everybody's saved, and Rand is here for some reason, and he's like, what happened? And they get back home, and they're just like, oh, this was just, we did it, we survived. And there's news reports saying like, oh, mass hysteria here as in the town of Kingston Falls. As
nobody knows what happened. Some people say little green men.
Well, it's so silly. And the family's just kind of recovering, and they're like, oh God, it's over, thank you. And the doorbell rings, and it's the old Chinese man
from the beginning
who owned the Mogwai.
He has tracked them down. He figured out where the Mogwai went, and he's here to take Gizmo back.
Followed the carnage.
Well, yeah,
and he's here to take Gizmo back, and he takes Gizmo back and basically gives them the speech of like, hey, basically you white Americans, you ruin everything.
Yeah.
You don't know how to deal with nature's gifts, and you ruin them.
Yeah. He doesn't say white Americans specifically, but the line about, nature's gifts. Yeah, he did say that. And I was like, whoa, you said a whole word there. Like,
yes.
Yeah.
So,
relevant.
So, and rightly so. I don't think no one really,
they don't
resists,
protest.
Right. They don't protest. Like, they know that they screwed it.
Yeah.
And that, Gizmo is better off.
Yeah.
Back with his owner, and Gizmo wants to, as he's taking him out, the man is like speaking to the Mogwai, the old man, grandpa, whatever his name is. He's speaking to the Mogwai, like, he's speaking Chinese or maybe Mogwai language. I don't know. But they're having like a full on conversation. Mm-hmm. And on the way out the door, he's like, oh, he wants to say something to you, Billy. And he's like,
yeah, and that's all. I was expecting more.
Yeah, I was expecting it to be like, he opens up the thing and he's like, Billy, I'm a little bit disappointed in you, but overall, you took good care of me. And maybe one day, if you get a little more mature and you think you can handle the responsibility of Mogwai, we can try this relationship again.
Or maybe even just, I love you, Billy. But it was just, bye. Like,
So,
okay.
So, and then that's pretty much it. That's it. The old man walks off into a matte painting of the neighborhood lit up with Christmas lights.
Yes. Although he does say to Billy, like, maybe one day you'll be ready.
Yeah.
So
maybe
here,
one day.
so which was,
he says, maybe one day there'll be a sequel to this movie.
Might there be? Yeah. So, and at some point, Billy and Kate have kissed, so you know that there's happy romance there.
Yeah,
and
right before the encounter at the department store.
Yeah,
there's a passionate kiss right before he sends her off.
Passionate. That was the weakest kiss. That was like a 12-year-old
stress. It was stress. There were performance issues. Okay,
that was.
It was stressful.
That was a sad. Billy's like 22, 23. You can do better than that. Yeah, but anyway.
Yeah. Well, he's only been able to practice on Barney, so. Yeah.
It's true. Kate appears to be the only woman his age in town, so.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure. He's the only option. So that's Gremlins. Like there you go. We just took you on a wild ride of Gremlins and Mogwais and
xenophobia,
Barney's French kiss dogs, and
So, okay. So why is this a must see for you? Like, is it just you just have such strong memories of it, or what's the?
Yeah, no, it's the storybooks from Hardee's. It's just the amount of times that I've watched it. It's just Joe Dante movies. Like they're just that point in the 80s where directors were just making these like one sort of outlandish movie after another. Mm-hmm. You've got Gremlins, you've got Inner Space. When you've got movies like that are just like, I don't know, man, we don't have to justify any of this. Hey, you know what? Somebody figured out a way to shrink themselves in a small capsule down to the size they can go inside your body, and we're just going to do that.
And it somehow ends up in somebody's uterus.
Whatever, man.
That's not weird.
Yeah, like it's just you could just do that, and it was great. It's just these sort of carefree, like whimsical movies that just didn't have to make sense. Again, like we said with the rules, like who cares? Who cares if the rules don't make sense? Like who cares about when it's midnight? Like who cares? And it's fun, and it's of course it doesn't hurt that I watched it a lot, and I had a Gizmo backpack at one point. And it was just a fun movie from my childhood, and again saw it many, many times. Watched it over and over again.
Yeah, it is fun. I'll give you that.
It's just fun, and it's just one of those movies that like at some point I will share with our son. Mm-hmm. But maybe not quite this year.
I feel like with Phoebe Cates, there's a window. You want to do it before he gets too interested in her versus his story. Line.
Yeah, well, you show him this, and then a couple years later,
you do Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Yeah.
So that was really it. It was just this. It's not that it had this huge mark on me, but we talked a little bit about this in the Raised in Arizona episode, that there were just a lot of movies in the 80s that I watched at a kind of influential time, or watched multiple times. I wasn't like it's not super influential to a 6-year-old, but then I watched it again at 12 or whatever, and they really sort of defined my taste in movies and just like what is possible and what I like in a movie. And this was kind of it, directors like Joe Dante and the Coen brothers and Tim Burton and other guys like that were making these sort of irreverent, just like, we don't even like, what is reality? Like, it doesn't matter. Here's a movie that's basically like a story told by a crazy old man, and it doesn't matter, just all of that stuff. I lumped this movie in with Princess Bride and Labyrinth and Raised in Arizona and Adventures of Baron Munchausen, and it's all these movies that they all just kind of these sort of fantasy movies, because I do consider Raised in Arizona like a fantasy movie in a lot of ways. That just really, they just defined what I really found interesting in a movie. And again, as I've said, there were times in my life where I flirted with the idea of directing or screenwriting. And these are the movies that were the influences that pushed me in that direction, along with some darker stuff later on in my teens and 20s. But yeah, I mean, this was one of those movies that just set the pace And they don't really make movies like this anymore. They don't make movies that are, number one, like just a wholly original concept.
Mm-hmm.
Like, where did the Mogwai even come from? Like, what is it? Where did it come from? Who created it? And so it's this fully fleshed out world that's just, you only get part of it.
Mm-hmm.
They just scratch the surface. Where did the Mogwai come from? Why is it? What's the box? Where's the old man get this? What's the language they're speaking? Are there more of these? Or is he the last one? All these questions.
Yeah.
And the movie doesn't care to answer any of them.
Yeah.
And yeah, like, how do they breed if you can't get them wet, because the ones that come from the wet are evil? Like, well, how does it work?
Yeah.
And it's just, none of those things need to be answered. And the movie exists in its own world without them being answered. Like, it exists on its own merits without them being answered.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's fun.
Yeah. I take it you enjoyed this one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good time. It's a good time for sure.
I mean, my 2020 analysis of the xenophobia notwithstanding.
Yeah, well, everything.
That's more just like, it was a different time, and
wow. I mean, that's kind of the understanding that we have to have here as we do this podcast. It's just like, there are going to be some time and place things.
Oh, I know.
That are very much going to be.
Oh, I know. It's just interesting to see them clearly now versus in the 80s. I, as a kid, would not have noticed that. Certainly, if I were an adult then, I probably wouldn't have either. But just, we have different sensitivities now. So it's just fun to point that out.
Another fun thing about this movie that I noticed now watching it is a couple of my favorite voice actors are in it. Stripe, and I'm guessing probably a lot of the incidental Gremlin characters was voiced by Frank Welker,
mm-hmm.
who is a prolific voice actor. He did a ton of stuff, and he was always really good at just like making weird noises and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he did Megatron in the Transformers, and he was Ray in the Real Ghostbusters, I believe. And he did Slimer in the Real Ghostbusters. He's just good at like weird guttural noises. Like, he was very much a voice actor. I think he's still alive. He was very much a voice actor that was like, this is my instrument. I'm pointing to my vocal cords. Yeah. This is my instrument. And so I play it. Like, I don't just have gruff soldier man voice and like, oh, nice young man voice. I've also got like weird, guttural sounds, and I've got, and then of course Howie Mandel doing his Bobby voice for Gizmo is great, and Frank Welker was Megatron in the Transformers, and in the Transformers Optimus Prime is Peter Cullen, and Peter Cullen is credited in the credits, but I couldn't tell you. Peter Cullen just has this like earth-shaking, deep, authoritative voice, and I can't say that I heard it anywhere in there. I'm assuming he was just one of the incidental, Gremlin sound makers or whatever.
Okay. You're saying names that
no. This isn't for him. This is just me saying something that I noticed.
Okay.
I don't expect you to know who Frank Welker is.
I don't know.
Okay, but you should, but it's fine if you don't. So that was cool. That was a cool thing to notice this time, that Frank Welker was in it, and Peter Cullen, and to remember that Howie Mandel actually did Gizmo's voice. I'm sure I knew that at one time. But yeah, I mean, this is Gremlins. I really enjoyed coming back to it. It's been a few years since I watched it, and I had a good time talking about it.
Yeah, that was fun. Yeah, that was fun. Yeah,
this was a good one.
I hope that we can show it to our kiddo at some point. Either take the dark parts out or.
I think we probably, like you said, we could have had him here for it, but there would probably be some explaining to do at some point afterwards. But Gremlins, I think that's Gremlins wrapped up. What do you think?
Yeah. So hey, listen, we would love to know what you all think of Gremlins. Do we have the right take on it? What do you think of the xenophobia of the 80s showing up in 2020? You can drop us a line. We are at either Gmail or Twitter. We are at ysmypodcast at gmail.com or at Twitter. So drop us a line, let us know what you think, and then tune in for our next episode. I'm going to show Dave Reality Bites.
Oh, right. I almost forgot what we had scheduled.
Yes.
Okay. Reality Bites. That is one of those movies that is like a badge of shame for me, because that is such a time and place movie. Like that was I was the right-ish age for that and have not seen it. So you're going to help me write that.
I am. I actually didn't see it when I was supposed to. I saw it later, but that was the soundtrack to that was the first CD that I ever got. And I played that nonstop. And it was the summer before I went to college. So all that music is very much of a time for me. So
no, don't give them all the good material. They got to come back. Then again, if you're still here an hour and 40 minutes into this, maybe we can give you something for that.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, tune in next time when we talk about Reality Bites and soundtrack and Plaid and Troy and all that. So we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. This has been You Show Me Yours. Bye.
Bye. The You Show Me Yours theme song is Uplifting Electronic Indie by Winnie the Moog from filmmusic.io.